Hello, and welcome back to Resonite. Now that I've spent a bit more time in this game, I've had the opportunity to find some tools and mods that make my life a little bit easier. So I thought I would share some of my findings, because at least something in this video should be helpful to you too. Anyway, let's get started. If you're coming over from VR chat, you may be suffering from a distinct lack of personal reflective surfaces, and I prescribe one dose of Mirracle. It adds a personal view of your avatar right in your Resonite menu. Mirracle is actually more of a camera than a mirror, so you can check yourself out at multiple angles, even viewing your avatar from behind. You may think it's a bit vain, being able to sanity check your appearance in a new environment is incredibly useful. It just becomes second nature to open up your dash and make sure your digital equivalent is all set to go. Now Mirracle is just a facet, and that means it's a custom UI element that was made inside of Resonite. So we aren't requiring any mods just yet. There's links in the description for everything in this video that you can copy and paste in-game. And if you're unsure how to install Facets, a bird named Decoy made an excellent tutorial. Now Mirracle isn't the only useful facet there is, of course. I also want to give a brief shout out to the facet World You're In. This menu item makes it super easy for you to check out what instances you have open and what ones you might want to close out really fast. You can do the same thing from the Worlds menu, but this simplifies things a bit. This next tool is super useful for keeping your code organized. Well, more like in place. This is RedPrint. You'll need one of these controllers in your world for this to work. And if we open up our menu here, you can see we can swap it over to a Flux tool. This is pretty similar to the standard one. Or go ahead and spawn a RedPrint. Now, I know this can look a bit intimidating, but it actually helps out a lot. This is a knife, and it has code on it that lets it behave that way. Let's say I wanted to look at that code and maybe make some changes. I would take my logic, and I would unpack it. And oh my goodness, what is this? The code is actually attached to the knife. So as I move the knife, the code moves with it, which is a bit of a pain, especially when you're making props that you want to test out and move around. Now let's go ahead and unpack the same item with RedPrint. I will take that logic and I'll put it under the unpack target, and I will unpack it. And look at that. It was all nicely arranged onto a wonderful grid for us. And now we actually have a chance at reading that code. And the best thing is that code is constrained to this grid, so I can still use and test this item while making changes to the code. And when you're done making changes, you can just hit this Pack 2 button, and now everything exists on this item. So if I save this now, the code will be saved alongside the item. So yeah, it's a way easier way of keeping track of your code when you're working on moving objects, like props or avatars. Now you don't strictly need RedPrint. You could simply parent the code to another object that doesn't move, but then you'll have to remember to reparent it after you're done making your edits. So it's a little bit of a pain, and I find that RedPrint simplifies the process a lot. If you want to see Resonite in action, I stream every Wednesday. You can connect to Twitch here, so of course we let chat fling us around. Okay, so now we're moving into the territory of actual mods. My standard disclaimer applies for dealing with anything modded. Downloading anyone else's code off the internet does have an inherent risk. Mods live or die based on their reputation, and Resonite is a pretty tight-knit place, but it's important to check with the community to make sure things are safe. So Resonite has a mod launcher called Resolute. You'll also need to download the Resonite Mod Loader to get anything working in-game. Check out the GitHub page for the full install instructions. The first thing you're probably going to want is the Resonite mod settings page. This simply adds a menu to configure other mods. Pretty simple, but it might be important for one of the other mods you download. When you're new to Resonite, it can be really tough to remember what category each programming node or component is located in. Cherry Pick gives you a search menu when adding components, making things easier to find. Okay, so let's create something here. I'll just use a blank sphere. We're going to go ahead and select that with our dev tool, open up its inspector, and let's say I want to attach a particle system to this, but I don't know which category particles are under. So if I go ahead and search for part, look, we have particle system, and it was under the rendering tab. I know that now, but I wouldn't have known it when I was just looking for it. Now if I scroll down, I went ahead and added that particle system. And we can also see things related to the particle system like, oh look, particle style. I probably need that to get my particle system to work. Now I should mention this system isn't perfect, because it turns out I also needed something called a point emitter in order to actually emit my particles. And that wouldn't have come up in this menu here. So there is a chance you may miss something in a sub-menu. But overall, it's enough to get you started. The same also applies to programming nodes. So if I go ahead and search something like if, you can see, oh, if is under flow. And that probably has to do with the program flow in Resonite. So now if I'm looking for other similar things like while or for, they'll probably be under the same flow category. If you're using any sort of Quest headset, there's a mod called No Tank Controls. Equipping certain items inside of Resonite disables some of your joystick movement. This is done when an item has a secondary action. This mod actually retains the movement ability of that joystick. Look, I know that's all super confusing, but basically it makes tools a bit more fluid to use with Quest controllers. Keen viewers might notice my inventory isn't completely vanilla. We have the recent and pinned sections here, as well as a last updated. This is all due to a mod called Better Inventory Browser, and even though I feel like it adds some clutter, those pin sections can be nice to have. I also have Inspector Scroll, which just allows you to scroll through inspectors easier. Anyways, I hope some of this helped you on your Resonite adventures. Thank you so much to our Ko-Fi members, and I will see you next time.